This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Tuesday. How's everybody doing? Let's talk about some junk silver, shall we? Or some great silver, maybe. That's older than circulation coins like dimes, quarters, half dollars, and dollars from back before our government debased our money by removing the silver from our coinage, roughly 1965, roughly. Many of these older coins are not only a solid investment, but an ideal for trade or barter if, I'm going to say it, if Carney gets in and makes us all eat bugs and everything else and shuts down everything, goodness gracious. The fact that we even got to go down those thought processes and actually give it serious consideration is just... Well, it's Canada today, isn't it? It's insane, but it is Canada today. Anyways, Silver Gold Bull, they are my go-to for precious metals. And, of course, they have a featured deal on junk silver right now, exclusively for you, the listener. You can text or email Graham for details about this feature or any other questions you may have around buying, selling, storing, or using your retirement accounts to invest in precious metals. silvergoldbull.ca.com, depending on which side of the border you're on. They ship all over the place here in North America. Just make sure to remind them that you heard about them from the SMP on all your purchases. Profit River. Well, in Carney's Canada, or whoever's Canada today, owning a gun, probably not a bad thing, especially, as they try and take more and more. You just got to listen to Rod Giltaca or Tracy Wilson talk about all the different gun grabs going on. And we're trying to make it as easy as possible for all you fine folks across Canada. That is by having Joel, the primary contact for all you, the listeners. You just shoot him an email at snp@profitriver.com. It's down in the show notes. And that bypasses all the normal and sometimes inexperienced sales staff that they have and puts you on to their primary our primary contact, their phone and internet sales manager. And any purchases you make, whether in person, online, over the phone, make sure that you use the code SNP on your orders. It's going to get you tossed in for a $100 gift card. They ship anywhere in Canada, so no worries. Doesn't matter where you're at. They're going to get it to you. And they got a ton of stuff. They got consignment guns, too. So if you're not looking for brand new, you can go in and check out some of the different firearms that they're selling for other people, which is pretty cool. And just go to profitriver.com. They are the major retailers of firearms, optics, and accessories, serving all of us here in Canada. RecTech Power Products. They just got done with the Sports and Leisure Show here in Lloydminster. And they've been committed to excellence in power sports for over 20 years. Their big news of this year has been Lund fishing boats. And actually, I was just running into a whole bunch of guys that are currently about to go on some ice fishing trips. And obviously, you don't need a boat for that. Although I'm sure it doesn't matter. That's a weird train of thought. I'm like, yeah, somewhere somebody's taking a boat out ice fishing. I'm sure of it. Regardless, when it comes to Lund, I don't know why that's so funny to me. Anyways, my random brain on a Tuesday, I guess. When it comes to some of the big news, they got the Lund, which is the Cadillac of the fishing world for boats. They spent 6 years slowly working it out so that they could sell them here in Lloydminster. So if you're driving through Lloydminster, on the west side is the RecTech Power Sports they're building there. You should stop in and see their showroom. They got a ton of stuff. Golf season's going to be coming up. Oh, baby. I lose a lot of balls, but regardless, golf season's a ton of fun. You're going to be, on the pontoon boat. They got one of those sitting there. Maybe you're on the golf course, grab a golf cart. Maybe you're just doing a little bit of 4x4, all the different quads or side-by-sides, etc. They got an excellent selection. So stop in on the west side of Lloydminster or go to rectechpowerproducts.com. PlanetCom. When you're busy running a growing business, trying to stay on top of the ever-changing world of information technology, well, it can be overwhelming to say the least, and they want to take care of you, leaving you to do your thing while they do theirs. For over 22 years, PlanetCom has been there to boost your productivity by proactively managing every aspect of your IT infrastructure, both in-house and in the cloud, and that ensures you're not too tangled up in technology to get anything done. Right now, they're building the new Sean Newman podcast website. It looks sharp. It looked really sharp. So if you're in the market for a new website, planetcom.ca. Planetcom.ca. Substack, free to subscribe to. I got my this past Sunday out a touch late, but we got her done. And your week in review is there. And then all these episodes, we've started doing what I've dubbed the debrief, which airs on Substack for paid members. It's basically my thoughts right after an episode. I sit down and I talk to the phone, and I publish it for all you fine folks. And then I love getting your feedback as well. So it's been a ton of fun, and it's been well received so far. I got told you haven't been talking about the new studio lately. Oh, no worries, folks. New studio's coming here in 2025. You want to be on the wall? Value for value? Just company? We're looking for skills, labor, materials, money, people, e-transfer. You just let me know that's what the e-transfer's for. Your name's going on the wall. It's going to be freaking sweet. Yeah, I said it. If you're listening or watching on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, X, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to leave a review. Make sure to retweet this sucker. This one is hot. It's coming in hot. All right, let's get on to that tail of the tape. The first is an award-winning Canadian investigative journalist and best-selling author, recognized for his in-depth reporting on money laundering, organized crime, and foreign interference here in Canada. The second, a prominent American short seller and investor widely recognized for his ability to uncover corporate fraud and financial misconduct. I'm talking about Sam Cooper and Marc Cohodes. So buckle up, here we go. Welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Sam Cooper and Marc Cohodes. Boys, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us. We're quite the duo, Sam and I.
Well, Sam, you've been on the show before. What I just want to do real fast is, Sam, you've been on before. Marc, you haven't. What I love to do when a person comes on for the first time is just give a little bit of their backstory so people know who they're listening to. Sam, obviously, I would love for, in 30 seconds, if you want to promote, the fact you have a book, and people should probably pick that up. But I'll start with Sam, and then we'll go to Marc, and then we'll get into a couple of the thoughts I have this morning and see where we get to. So, Sam, just a little bit on your background.
So people across North America are starting to know that I've been in journalism for 20 years. 2 years ago, after serving at broadcaster and starting in Vancouver with media, I started my own website, thebureau.news, to unpack deep geopolitical stories that focus on an area that I'm a leader in the world in journalism, and that's understanding the nexus between illicit finance and foreign hostile state operations that are seeking to undermine Canada and the United States. And I argue accurately, including in my book, Wilful Blindness, that Canada has been substantially saturated by Chinese intelligence that uses organized crime and, by the way, works together with regimes from, Russia and Iran to target influencers and politicians. And that's a big problem in Canada right now. And I'll say that people around the world, it's shocking, but it's now essentially, this has come out in US government positions and records that this is the concern.
Yeah, and I'm just going to do one last plug for your book, because after you came on the first time, I ordered it, and then I started reading it, and it was funny because I just had Kelvin Krusty on, not knowing who he was. He got suggested by a policeman out of Edmonton, and so I had him on, and then of course I started reading your book. I'm like, oh, isn't that funny, right? Like it's like right there. So there's lots of ties, and if people are wanting to dig into some more of this conversation and actually start to like understand it, you can support Sam, and of course then you can get to some of the information. Marc, first time on the show, appreciate you giving us some time. Please, a little bit of background on yourself.
Thanks for having me. I'm here because my hero, Sam Cooper's on too. But not only buy his book, subscribe to him at the Bureau. You can get it free, or you can pay a whopping $100 of loony a year, which is about a Big Mac and a bag of Timbits. But subscribe to him, follow him on Twitter, and he's great, and he's a hero. About me, I'll be 65 in June. I've had an issue with Canada since 2014. Great place to visit. A handful of people are really nice up there. The rest of them are corrupt and crooked. I Sam and I met in 2014 in Vancouver. I was tracking down the largest mortgage fraud in the history of Canada, Home Capital Group. A lot of my work sort of intersected with Sam, and we've been fast friends for 11 years. And if you go back, because the internet never forgets, there's plenty out there on me in Canada, money laundering, mortgage fraud, crooked politicians. And sadly, I've been dead right on what has gone on, who's crooked, who's been exposed, the massive levels of crime. Sadly, I've been right. And now things are in just a complete death spiral. I don't mean to offend anyone. I call Canada Arctic Mexico. I have for a decade. So I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings. I just hope to wake people up on how dire things truly are. But most people know me from the investment business. I'm more famous shorting stocks than owning stocks. I'm a skeptical guy, and I'm very easy to check out and verify. So, on that note, Sam and I are a pretty good tag team partner on everything Arctic Mexican. And while some of the things he says and I say aren't really believable, again, sadly, they're true. So that's a little bit about me and my adventures with Sam.
Well, maybe I could. Sure. I mean, it's helpful to say that. I mean, I started as a young investigative reporter, having wanted to be a lawyer, but not go down that path. That I can only report on documented facts. Marc reached out to me, as he says, about 10 years ago, basically saying, "You're on to like a real rodeo in Vancouver. It's wild up there." And when we started talking, his quote was sort of like the crosswinds of organized crime and how they've captured your real estate market. You're just starting to dig into it, but it's going to be bigger. And as again, I have to be all fact based, but Marc, as like one of the best fraud detectors as a short seller in American history of investors, his sense of what's wrong and where it is, I've just found incredibly prescient. And he does say things that even bother me as a Canadian, but a lot of them turn out to be, years down the road, so accurate that I'm constantly amazed. So that's my caveat, if you will, when he says something that's going to offend Canadians. I've been offended too, but I can't question a lot of his wisdom and insight.
Well, if I may, Marc, you're not going to offend me today. I look at the state of Canada, and I think it's high time we got to the bottom of some things, and we've been working on it on this side. I'm happy to have you here. I've listened to you two go on multiple different times, multiple interviews, I guess. And there's a reason why I reached out to Sam about having you on, because to me, you offer a lot of insight. So I'm very excited to have you both on. And I want to start with David Eby. When I listen to you two talk about, Marc, you having phone calls with him and saying, listen, this is what you probably should say to Trump, and get on the same page, because there is a problem. There's a problem. He knows there's a problem. Everybody knows there's a problem. And yet we're going to ban liquor. We're going to, go with this Team Canada approach, and on and on and on. Your thoughts on David Eby, BC, and where we're heading here up north. Sam, feel free, gentlemen, you two can discuss. I just throw a question. I love when the guests go back and forth.
So I stirred it up a little bit yesterday on Twitter, because I think there's evidence out there that Eby is now captured by the CCP. Sam can chime in a little bit. I think Sam's going to break some stuff on Eby in the days and weeks ahead, so I'm sure not going to steal his thunder. But I view, my relationship with Eby. I mean, Eby and I go back to 2015, 2016. I don't think I'm being bold or speaking out of school that between Sam and I, we toppled Christy Clark, who at the time was the premier in BC. If not for Sam's and my work, she could still be in power. So I think Sam and I are directly responsible for coming with information which caused her defeat in the election. I mean, I knew Eby when he was just a simple MP out of Point Grey, And he's a brilliant man. He is the smartest guy in the room. He is an accomplished lawyer, and he knows where the bodies are buried in terms of money laundering, Chinese corruption. He brought the casino issue, and he's a friend. I think he wants nothing to do with me anymore after my outbursts on Twitter, but he was going to come to my 60th birthday party in California if it wasn't for COVID. And my girlfriend and I were the two Americans invited to his inauguration. So I'm not speaking out of school that Eby and I are tight, and we talk frequently. So when the Trump thing about the tariffs came out, him and I had a long call, before he did his press conference. And I said, this is your chance, right, to lead from the front. This is your chance to become the leader that Canada needs. And he said, what do you think? I said, well, you should embrace what Trump has to say because you have major problems in BC. You have huge money laundering issues, which you're well aware of. You have huge organized crime issues, which you're well aware of. You have huge border security and drug issues, which you're aware of. You know, to backtrack, I proposed something called the Cooper Commission probably 8-9 years ago, which would have been, if you cannot verify where your money was derived from and you purchased property in Vancouver, it's subject to seizure. And that would clear up all the money laundering that went on in real estate, including a $36 million house that was bought by a Chinese student, with money from her dad. So I said to Eby, you're aware of the Cooper Commission. You're aware of all these things. You go to Trump and say, Mr. President, we have problems here in BC. And though your tariffs are unfair, I, David Eby, and the citizens of BC, we want to work with you, right? We want to trade with you. We want to work with you. In exchange, we need anti-money laundering and KYC help to solve this money laundering, fentanyl, drug, smuggling, crime issue. Because you're dead right with what's going on here. And we/I would love nothing more than you to help us. At the same time saying we don't want to become the 51st state. You can understand that. People are deeply patriotic here, and we even wrap ourselves in the Canadian flag. But the issues you bring up, sir, are correct. And Eby said, you're dead right. And I said, why in the living name of God would you side with the feds or in Ottawa? Because they do nothing for you. Trudeau's never done anything for BC. Nothing. I mean, he told me about funding issues, that the feds don't fund them properly. There's RCMP issues. BC is like an orphan to the feds. They don't give a fuck. So why do you need to play this game with Trudeau on trade when you know Trump is right? You're aware, Eby, of the duffel bags of money going through the casinos. You're aware of the Cullen Commission. You're aware of Sam's work. He's aware of everything. So instead of saying, if you have an eating problem, a drug problem, a booze problem, a gambling problem, the first place to start is to admit you have a problem. Now, BC has a huge problem. Go, you raise your hands now.
Let me chime in. Mark and I both know that David Eby, as an opposition politician, a young NDP guy, brilliant young lawyer, ran against Christy Clark in Point Grey, which is Vancouver epicenter rioting of Chinese money laundering and interference. He beat Christy Clark, and he really rode a wave of what Mark would call right and righteous reporting that stemmed from my work showing that China was starting to own the city. Eby came out with a comment once, whether it was on X or in a news article, something to the effect that, he understood that Vancouver's real estate market was deeply influenced by China, which has endemic corruption and capital flight. So yes, he 100% knows about the problems that Donald Trump is aware of. I mean, how well does he know it? Another book people should look up is called The Mosaic Effect by Scott McGregor, a former, you're nodding your head, Sean, former Canadian.
Well, I was just going to say he's coming on later this week. So
Perfect.
I'm like, I'm into this world now of trying to get to where you guys are. Anyway, carry on.
So let me tee Scott up for that'll be a great conversation. One, Scott McGregor is the guy that was working for the Canadian military and intelligence, working for the RCMP, piecing together how Chinese organized crime, working with Chinese military, is corrupting and undermining Canada. And Scott will tell you, he briefed David Eby, who, when he came to power and was Attorney General in 2017, he went to David Eby and said, we're going to blow your mind. The amount of money laundering through BC government casinos and real estate is insane. And not only that, it's not money laundering. It's a Chinese strategic play to undermine Canada. So you can ask him more about that, but that just goes to Mark saying that both Mark and I have had private conversations with David Eby. I can point your listeners and viewers to public statements Mr. Eby made, where Mr. Eby understood. Heck, people can go to the Hogue Commission documents and find that David Eby papered the trail, going to talk to Justin Trudeau's national security advisor and saying, I, David Eby, have a concern of all the fentanyl being run into BC. What should I do about it? I need federal assistance. I need federal assistance in Vancouver's port. Here was a key one that I've reported for the Bureau. Eby goes to Ottawa and tells them, what should I do with concerns of any candidates with linkages to organized crime or Chinese interference? How can I, David Eby, as the premier, have the knowledge to respond to those threats? So I believe he was reflecting, whether papering the trail or honestly asking. He had some idea that he faces big vulnerabilities. And people, again, you can go to the Hogue Commission records, you can read what I wrote about it. So the issues of China, fentanyl, Vancouver's port being infiltrated by organized crime, David Eby knows this, but something strange happened. I think, Mark and I recognize now when Eby became premier, he starts to realize the benefits of donations from the Chinese Canadian community that very unfortunately is gate kept by Chinese Communist Party assets. They're called community leaders. They're actually Chinese, officials through something called the United Front, or they're gangsters. One of them owns a winery in central British Columbia, is a former CCP official that's become a big donor to David Eby. I'll say two more things before ending this answer. Eby has an advisor that is a pro-Beijing Chinese-Canadian journalist who's from Shanghai. He's an official David Eby advisor, and my work attaches him to tight connections to the Chinese consulate, official connections to Beijing's United Front Work Department, apparently media activities that involve this David Eby advisor in NDP government interference operations, Liberal Party of Canada MP support for a guy named Parm Baines, support for Patrick Brown in the Conservative Party leadership race. So the picture I'm painting is someone very close to David Eby, is a United Front agent. And the last point I'll add is that something that seems to have been key in David Eby's turn is there's a guy named Michael McGee, the former chief of staff of Vancouver Mayor Gregor Robertson. Now, Gregor Robertson's city hall in Vancouver was entirely overrun by Chinese interference. I know this from open source. I know this from a Canadian intelligence source. And so Michael McGee being very influential now in David Eby's campaigns, By the way, Gregor Robertson just announced as a candidate for Mark Carney. The picture I'm drawing is that the Liberal Party and the Chinese Communist Party have become very influential in the direction of David Eby. And that's what I think is going on with Eby.
And to sort of put the cherry on top of the sundae, I'm not being aggressive to say, if not for Sam and I, Eby would not be in power today. Zero shot. Zero chance. Sam and I made Eby in a period where Christy Clark was vulnerable through Panda Bonds and her dealings with the CCP. And Eby knows of this corruption. Eby was in on the Cooper Commission. I had dinner with my girlfriend and I at Tojo's a year and change ago. He was going to enact the Cooper Commission in 2024. And he wanted me up there when it would be announced. So something terribly sinister has happened with Eby. Terribly sinister. And I said on Twitter yesterday that Eby's in on it. And I think through some of the revelations Sam has said today and more, it's clear Eby's in on it. And he, he's a smart man. He is the smartest man in the room. But to wrap himself in the Arctic Mexican flag and to pull this bullshit about elbows up and we're not going to drink Kentucky bourbon. Who gives a fuck? Drink the water from the ocean for all I care. Or we're going to tax American trucks going through BC to go to Alaska. That doesn't solve the problem. You have an organized crime, money laundering, fentanyl, drug problem, not to mention the goings on East Hastings, right in your backyard. Admit you have the problem rather than being an agent for the CCP. It's clear gaslighting. But the thing is, he knows Sam and I know. And he knows I'm a very, very, very formidable adversary because I don't stop. And do we have the goods on him? Yeah, we have the goods on him. But it's not too late to come clean and say the problems here are significant and need to be fixed. And not selling Kentucky bourbon is not the solution to anything. It's not. And this elbows up bullshit is just that. It's bullshit. What are you really gonna do? And this gets back into the 51st state territory thing. I think Canada will end up being a territory of the United States one of these days, because I think Alberta, in no uncertain terms, wants out, and wants out in a big way because they're treated about as poorly as BC is. But the problem is, Eby, when you say elbows up, if Trump wanted Canada, he could take it in about 4 hours. He could block the ports, fly and land people in, fly the American flag and say, you guys are now us. Because the currency is shit, the economy is shit, inflation is out of control, and there's no end in sight until people realize the problems. So you brought up Eby. I'm horrific. I'm very, very, very disappointed in my friend. Hugely let down. And, when you watch this podcast, Eby, do better. I mean, just do better.
Sean, can I add that? I mean, there's an alternative path, and I think Jim Balsillie of Research in Motion nailed it in a podcast with Jordan Peterson. He said he takes the view, of course, as patriotic Canadians do not appreciate Donald Trump's rhetoric, and yet Balsillie said we're at a pivotal point where Canadians can either decide, yeah, we go with the plans of Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney, who engineered those plans that are Ron plans. They're tax what we're good at, resources, don't protect our IP or encourage us to value add to our resources, but subsidize, the green energy plays that communist China and whoever, is, Michael Bloomberg or everyone else that meets in Davos. is already an investor in the plans that Mark Carney wants Canadian taxpayers to subsidize. That will kill Canada. And as Balsillie says, whether we like it or not, turn us into Puerto Rico without a passport. To add another kind of, that comes from Balsillie, which sounds a little bit reminiscent to what Mark says about Arctic Mexico. My point is, Balsillie's got the economic and trade piece down. He doesn't nail what I nail, that Canada's Asia-Pacific trade strategy, run through BC, essentially started by Pierre Trudeau, is the key factor in undermining Canada, and everything flows down from like 20 or 30 families that kind of run Canada and parcel it off for themselves while screwing Alberta. And I know I won't ramble on because Mark has more to say about 20 or 30 families and how Canadians have been tricked into believing that we have, you know, a top flight democracy when really we've got sort of like a, you know, a shell game going on where it's being parceled off, and you know the rewards are not flowing to the citizens as they should.
If I may, I do want to say any Canadian that's offended by how the U.S. is acting, it's like, well, it's time, you know, wake up, stop being butthurt, because at the end of the day, I sit here and I go, it was only a few years ago where we had probably the most patriotic movement I've ever seen our country have, and they deemed the Canadian flag a hate symbol. And then, you know, you fast forward and that same symbol, now we wrap ourselves in and we're doing all these things and we're against the United States. It's like, but listen to, like, is, you know, to the Canadian, not to you two. It's like, but why? Like, just look at what's going on and start to be like, what the heck is going on? Why are we letting these morons guide us? 20 families, whatever the number is. It's like, we can see it playing out in front of us. Just wake up and say no more. It's like, just no more of this. Like, it's ridiculous. And then they put Carney in place and you're like, it can't, is this literally happening? Folks, it's literally freaking happening in front of us. Mark.
Couple things. You know, first of all, I'm not a Trumper. I'm not a political guy. I'm not a Trumper. I don't talk vaccine. I'm not religious. I'm not a Trumper. But he does have a big bang way of doing things. He tries to shock and awe you and knock you on your ass and then back off to try to get you to think. He knows the solution's not tariff. He knows exactly where the problem is with the money laundering and the crime and the drugs and the weak border. I mean, you talk about a weak border. Every criminal in Canada who's brought up, their last name ends in a vowel. They're either Chinese, they're either East Indian. You
It's
know,
sing.
they're not
Sing for the moment, sing for the year.
Right. They're not, their name's not Ole Evinrude, who was born in Moose Jaw and you know has been there for 135 years. Those, you know, the normal, and again, I'm not a racist. They've called Sam and I racist for a dozen years, so I might as well get into it. The immigrants of the immigrants of Canada have destroyed the country. Now, a lot of them have helped, and a lot of them have been productive, and a lot of them have made great lives for themselves. But it's the 5% of the bad apples that screw it for everybody. It's the guy who the DOJ busts for selling 600 kilos of cocaine a week, half a ton of coke a week, right? The DOJ and FBI busted this Canadian lowlife, right? And he actually had numerous mortgages with a friend of mine's bank where she runs compliance. And she complained about this guy to FinTrack for 3 years, and FinTrack did nothing. So it's the loose borders of Canada. It's the money laundering. It's the financial crime. It's the fentanyl. And it's the politicians being greased by these criminals. And I said, you know, a year ago, Canada's run by 20 to 30 families on Twitter. And I said, the rest of you are serfs. That's SERFS, you know, back from the feudalism days, right? And no one wants to hear it, right? And everyone responds by, well, you're an American, you guys have problems there. no disagreement, right? No disagreement. But I'm a self-made guy, right? I live in Montana. I live in California. You know, I can rise above the garbage. But the serfs, right? The median income in BC is $80,000 a year. Median income of BC. Median house price, $1,100,000. That math doesn't work. And the math really doesn't work because money launderers and criminals don't pay taxes. The family making 85,000 does. So the hard workers are supporting the criminal element in Arctic Mexico. So the vicious cycle is horrifically bad. It's not Bill Morneau who's married to a McCain who's going to feel it. He has properties outside the country. He can always flee. Justin Trudeau is going to flee. He's not going to end up living at Lake Muskoka. He'll end up living in the Caribbean or New Zealand or someplace in exile. So people just need to wake up that the guys in power are gaslighting you, making you believe this is a patriotic thing, that this is an attack on the maple leaf. It's not. It's an attack on your sanity. It's an attack on your intelligence. And it's going to be an attack on your way of life. Because if Carney gets in, and I'm not saying PP has it all figured out, if Carney gets in, he's going to seal the deal in 6 to 18 months with foreign bad operators. No doubt about it. No doubt in my mind about this. And again, don't take my word for it. Just check me out. Check out everything I've talked about for the past dozen years. Check out what Sam has said for the past dozen years. We've been spot on this thing. And
look at what I mean. To Mark's point, look at who Carney is picking to run. Gregor Robertson in Vancouver, who I'm saying with confidence, together with Christy Clark, opened the doors at scale to Chinese money laundering, called the people that looked into it racist. David Eby was on the right side of the equation back then. He's on the wrong side now. And there's discussion that Carney wants Christy Clark to run, but they don't know if that will alienate their left NDP base too much because she's such a lightning rod for.
If I may, Sam, you raise a really interesting point because here in Alberta, Amarjeet Sohi, the mayor of Edmonton, has stepped away from being a mayor to run for the Liberal Party, and what on the conservative side we see is they have this like level of like, and I assume the Liberals is the same way, okay? And that is, if you're going to run for the Conservative Party, they're going to do this deep dive into who you are. And if you got bad social media posts, you can't do that, right? And so they knock off all these amazing candidates. And when we watch the Liberal Party right now, you got Carney at the top, and you watch all the people who are stepping up to run, and you're like, well, that's a corrupt politician, and that's another criminal, and I'm like, it's literally. I've been trying to figure this out in my brain, right? Because I see Carney, I'm like, oh my God, this is literally happening right in front of me. And I go to you two brilliant fellows who've been on this for a long time. Like, it literally looks like the mafia, the mob, whatever we're going to call it, is about to take over our country, or it's already been taken over for a long time. I was saying to you, Sam, before we got going, I'm like, when I do the TD Bank thing, October 2024, which isn't that long ago, they got fined for $3.1 billion for money laundering. And then if you just do a little deeper dive, and shout out to Ken for me and him talking through this, you got Frank McKenna, former premier of New Brunswick. He's the deputy chair of TD Bank. He's also a director of Brookfield Asset Management. Well, who else was a director of Brookfield Asset Management? Mark Carney. And you start to do all these ties, and you keep building this web. And I'm assuming I'm speaking to the choir here with Sam and Mark. But I'm like, I guess the question is are we literally, this election here coming, April 28th, is it like, everybody's like, oh, Pierre this, Pierre that. And I'm like, I understand it. Is he going to get everything right? I don't know. But it looks to me like maybe a little bit of sanity, maybe a little bit. versus like literally handing the country over to the mob, to the mafia, to the corruptest of the corrupt.
Before Mark chimes in, like I like the work you did there with Frank McKenna, so I know Mark will have some room to roam on your comparison to the mob. But look, Canada-China Business Council, Scott Bryson, who will not be an unfamiliar name, Sean, to your political watchers, former key Liberal Party minister. I would say questions around him. A chair, I believe, of the Canada-China Business Council, one of the top donors to the Carney campaign. And look, the Canada-China Business Council is essentially one of these key families in Canada. They're called the Desmarais of Montreal. The organization is called Power Corporation. They had
throw Power Corp in there. He's part of it.
Well, let me just, finish on this. Look, the Power Corporation, my work has shown, among others, have direct ties to Chinese offshore banking tycoons that are involved in Chinese intelligence operations of the type that the current State Department of Marco Rubio is very concerned with in Panama. So the Power Corporation has direct business and family relationships with Jean Chrétien. They're the backers of choice. They are the power behind the throne of Liberal prime ministers. Everyone in CSIS on the China desk knows this. And Scott Bryson, being, at the top of Canada-China Business Council and backing Carney, that tells you exactly about the power behind Carney and the direction that a Carney government will go in. And I'll toss this in very carefully. I and some others noticed that a very interesting RCMP suspect in the China police station story, who's involved in so much more that I won't disclose today, a key backer of the Liberal Party and a number of important people in the party, was named apparently to the board of this Canada-China Business Council, which blows my mind. And I'm sure it's not lost on people in the CIA and FBI and Homeland Security that know a lot more about these vulnerabilities with Justin Trudeau and his circle than I do. Mark, mob, Canada?
Of course it's mobbed up. And this 20 to 30 family thing, which I brought up again about a year plus ago, and everyone else is the surf. This election is do or die. This is the final tug at the slipping rope. If Carney gets in with his people, both legit and illegit, the country is finished, just finished, and the currency is going to be finished, and you'll become a U.S. state or territory, whether you like it or not. And the thing is, right now, in my view, Alberta holds the key, because I think this, what's her name, Danielle Smith. She's a legit operator. I happen to actually like her a lot, because she's a badass bitch who speaks out, and she is not afraid to speak truth to power. And she, should get a hold of me, and she could pull what I said with Eby, because the feds do nothing for Alberta. All they do is steal their resources. All the money goes one way. No, the feds do nothing to help Alberta. And I said on Twitter that if I was the king, I would trade Georgia, Arkansas, Alabama, and Mississippi to Canada for Alberta. Alberta holds the cards. And if Alberta says we've had enough, right, we've had enough with this organized crime, all this bullshit, all what's going on in the country, we want to be part of a United States territory, not the 51st state, but a territory. I think there's a lot to that, and a lot of people would like it. And there's a lot of good that would come from it. Now, is the United States the end-all be-all? No, far from it. But at least you can move from place to place. At least you can keep your money, albeit you pay taxes, albeit you can make a legitimate living. And instead of being in Edmonton in the dead of winter, where Celsius and Fahrenheit cross at, I think, 35 below, you guys could...
Minus 42.
Fine, minus 42. I missed school that day when they taught me the metric system. You could at least live part-time in Arizona or Florida. So to me, she holds the keys because Toronto, which is the financial capital of the Banana Republic, right? They're all in the tank, as are the lawyers, as is the RCMP, as is Hauspie, as is the media. Sam in the United States would have won 5 Pulitzer Prizes for his work. But in the media, which is government subsidized, he's unemployable. He can't work for any media company in Arctic Mexico, which is why he does what he does. And again, subscribe to him, ladies and gentlemen, and pay for it. Just don't do the free, because 100 loonies a year, again, you can buy yourself a Happy Meal at McDonald's and a bag of Timbits. Support the man, because good content should not be free. But, again, this shit is hitting the fan as we record this, right? Eby, who I had faith in, is completely in the bag. Carney has 3 passports, never been elected to anything, and how anyone can take him serious is a minor miracle. And it's time for the serfs to rally and speak up, and because this is 0 hour right here.
Yeah, so people are going to listen to this real talk conversation and then say, Marc is encouraging secession Alberta. Sam Cooper is not a patriot. And, look, Marc's message isn't much different from what Jim Balsillie is saying. That is, Canada is at a fork in the road, and you don't have to like Donald Trump, but what he's trying to extract, in my view, is partly related to the very real possibility of a war with China. Maybe he's muddying the waters with some trade dominance. I'm sure he is, but he's also making Canadians confront this harsh reality that they've essentially been lied to for 30 years by a Laurentian elite. So we're talking about 20 to 30 families and the governments that, they support, who have not been distributing the benefits of this wonderful, highly potential superpower, potential country, should be a superpower if common sense people like myself, and if Marc was born Canadian, were making policy, Sean, yourself as well, we would be a superpower by now. But we're all tied up in knots, and the only ones benefiting are these. Where did Elbows Up come from? It sounds like Sunny Ways to me. It sounds like Gerald Butts cooked that up. I'm a Canadian patriot, and I'm getting. I just like, we need to look at common sense.
If I may, gentlemen, I'm a Canadian patriot, live in Alberta, and the only way to fix Canada in my mind is by Alberta putting a referendum for them on leaving.
Yeah,
and I don't mean that to be like I don't like the rest of Canada. I love this country. When you talk to the highest levels of lawyers, they can all see we're literally tied in knots, and to get them untied would be moving a literal mountain to get to anywhere. Marc.
The ironic thing is, the most patriotic Canadian is me. There's no financial benefit for me on this. I have no positions in Canada, none. I don't stand to benefit by any of this. I'm actually trying to help you clowns and everyone else out with a clear path. Now, what happens one day when Carney gets elected, if he gets elected, hopefully not? What if Russia and China tried to invade Canada from the Arctic, from the north? Right? They can easily do it. They can easily do it. Then what's Canada going to do? Crawl to the United States and beg them for help? Then the fight's over when that happens. And that's the true risk, because Canada doesn't really have an army. They don't really have a navy. They don't really have anything. They have huge resources that are in Alberta and are locked in where it's kind of like, you may not like the way I say it. You may not like Sam's message. You may not like it. But the problem is, it's the fucking truth. And if you don't wake up, If you're trotting around at 480 pounds, smoking 3 packs of cigs a day, and think you're not going to have a stroke or heart attack, well, let me tell you, one day you are. Now, it may not be tomorrow, but it could be a week or a month from tomorrow. This is all going to happen, right? With or without the three of us talking about this. But what pods like this, or Sam's work, or listening to me, or following me on Twitter, which is @alderlingace, we're just trying to get y'all to think. Think for yourselves. Act responsibly. Say, what the hell is our way out? Alberta's way out is getting the hell out of Arctic Mexico. We all know Quebec wants out. We all know the prairies are upset about all the tariffs. They'll go to the highest bidder. And then you're left with the financial capital, the Banana Republic, Toronto, and CCP, West, Vancouver. That's all you guys got.
Well,
So
if I may, one of the things that you talk about Alberta leaving, it's the political realm of how to do that is complicated, and I hear a lot of Albertans who are upset with what's gone on for specifically the last 10 years of the Liberal government, are waiting on the election, which we now have finally a date. And for the longest time, nobody could tell us when the election was coming, right? And we had all these different dates. April 28th is coming. And one of the things when I'm listening to this conversation and I'm understanding how corrupt we are across the board, right? When it comes to, you're talking premiers, you're talking MPs, you're talking the head of the country,
Mayors.
the prime ministers, mayors. It's run so thick.
Banking regulators.
Right.
Crime regulators,
it's
media.
thick.
Don't stop at just a few.
Right. So you go, okay. So Mark Carney gets the Liberal leadership nod to become the Prime Minister of Canada. And the night before, they knock off 250,000 registered Liberals so that only 150 get to vote. Okay. And that doesn't even seem to stir the notion of anything in Canada. I'm like, we're not going to talk about 250,000? They knocked over, what is that? 60% of the voters. Boop, gone. Just boop. And okay, so now we're going to an election. You guys keep pointing out how corrupt everything is. I'm like, Sam, I don't know if Mark could, I'll ask Sam first. When you look at this election coming up, we're all going, it's this or not. Well, they know that too.
They know that too.
Is there any chance this is actually going to be a legit election, knowing how Canada works, where the votes need to come from? The fact that out west, we know we're going to vote blue, but it doesn't matter because if it goes a certain way out in the east, we're hooped anyways. I don't know, Sam, your thoughts?
So yeah, I'll point straight to a document that I reported on. I, as you know, broke the Chinese interference story. I had more documents that the Globe and Mail, who got into the game because for certain reasons, but look, a document said that the Conservative leadership race of 2022 was interfered with by key proxies who bought Conservative Party leadership memberships. As a matter of fact, to be clear, it didn't say the Conservative Party. It said a Canadian political party in 2022, but that could only be the Conservative Party. I'm just being transparent here. And so it said this key proxy was buying memberships for this party so that it could influence the party to become less, quote, anti-China. And so this fits in very exactly to the work that I have done, pointing to David Eby's key pro-Beijing columnist advisor, who was key in the support of Patrick Brown for the Conservative leadership race, and how surrounding David Eby's key advisor is a Chinese winery owner, and all these people that are listed as Beijing's United Front Work Department leaders in Vancouver, which is a keynote of interference. So what I'm saying is, there's already a precedent that the Conservative leadership race was infiltrated by key Chinese proxies at the highest level. I'm saying should be in Vancouver, should be connected to a well-known BC premier. You asked with 300,000 memberships for the Liberal Party. Okay, one, we know due to my work that Canada's election threat monitor says that Chrystia Freeland was attacked on WeChat. in the very same way that Kenny Chu was in the 2021 election. We know through open source that Chinese media very clearly was supportive of Mark Carney. We know the guy won by something like 86% of the votes in a completely opaque black box Liberal Party leadership. We know also that, a lot of Canadians exposed the absurdity of that leadership contest by like filing sort of membership saying, I'm Xi Jinping from, Hawaii. I want to just to show that the process was garbage, right? So yeah, probably a lot of fake memberships were thrown out. But within that black box were memberships, secured by Chinese operatives. I would say 99.99999% to 100% chance that lots of Chinese operatives voted for Mark Carney. I wait to be proven wrong, but I think the plausibility of that is extremely high. So look, Mark Carney, the leader, sketchy contest. Now we've got Gregor Robertson, potentially Christy Clark, candidates that I'm certain were already part of the interference findings of CSIS in 2019 and 2021 are running for the Liberals, including Parm Bains in Richmond, who beat Kenny Chu. No one can tell me that Parm Bains isn't subject of the NSI Cup report. So I think I've said, will we have a real contest? No, we've got a contest that China already has deeply interfered with. Khalistani separatists will be interfering in a number of parties. Hindu nationalists will be interfering. Iranian organized crime will be interfering. But what's the antidote? As many Canadians as ever vote in an election, go out and vote, and then we will have a free and fair election. By saying that, I'm saying there will be the most interference we've ever seen, but Canadians that aren't influenced, if you all go out and vote, they can't skew the contest, I believe.
Mark?
Canadian election interference is over my pay grade. Other than Eby barely won not many months ago, and that was probably tinkered with in Vancouver. Gregor Robertson is, he belongs behind bars, if nothing else, for treason, as does Christy Clark, as does Mike DeJong. The question is, it's up for everyone who listens to this to figure out, how you want your future to be. And, maybe if Carney gets elected, it will hasten Alberta's departure from Canada into a territory for the United States. Or maybe China or Russia will invade Canada from the northern border. I don't know. I mean, it's more than obvious to me. I'm not going to kiss and tell, but Sam and I have been approached by, I'd say, people of the highest order in the world about what goes on. So people who matter take us very, very seriously, very seriously. So we're working very hard behind the scenes to bring some sense to this insanity, away from doing podcasts and things like that. But, people who matter know our message. They know who we are. They know we're right. It's just a matter of how it's all going to play out. But, you doing these podcasts, Sean, are very important. And I think the key message is everyone listening here is an adult. You all had some level of schooling. You truly need to think for yourself and drop all this patriotism stuff. It's fine to be a patriot.
Fake patriotism, that is.
Huh?
Fake patriotism. Yeah.
Fake
Well,
patriotism.
whatever it is, this elbows up bullshit or Canada won or Team Canada, whatever it is. No one knows what Team Canada is. Is Team Canada the Hamas demonstrations in Toronto? Is that Team Canada? Is it the selling 600 kilos of coke a week and saying you're in the trucking business, being some illegal immigrant from Eastern India? Is that Canadian patriotism? Is Canadian patriotism smuggling fentanyl and fentanyl derived things in from China in the ports of Vancouver? Is that Canadian patriotism, or Eby getting influenced by the CCP? The sad thing, and I sort of want to close with this and let people think, yeah, you can make a lot of money and resources in Canada, and some private businesses you can make a lot of money. But generally in Canada, you can't really make a lot of money. It's not, the economy has been proven out is not that vibrant, which makes paying off the media, the RCMP, the OSC, Hauspie, politicians. It makes it easy because people can be bought cheaply there, which is like a huge problem. So roll it back, folks. Roll it back 20 or 30 years when the country was great. Realize what the hell has happened, and you guys can decide your own fate. Sam and I are here to help. You know, I'm not getting paid for anything, right? I've made my money in my life, right? I'm not doing this. No one pays me to speak out. I don't stand to benefit. I don't own property in Canada. I never intend to own property in Canada. I've been sued there. I've been investigated there. I've been detained in airports there. Every bad thing that can happen to me in Canada has happened. And I'm still here to try to help you all out.
Can I ask you, Marc? Like, I think your motivation is you've traveled up to Canada. You're taken with the beauty of the country, and you like Canadians. To me, that's your motivation.
Taken with the beauty of the country, taken with Canadians. I have some really good friends there, you being one of them. And it's sickening to me to watch innocent, God-fearing people get taken advantage of by the worst of the worst and the hardened criminals and get so duped. Just so duped with what goes on. You're so trusting and innocent. I call them the kitten and rainbow crowd. You're all kittens and you enjoy looking at rainbows, that you just need a hard reset in the way you think. I mean, the people in Vancouver get more upset when the team loses the Stanley Cup than when they do when their city gets infiltrated with the Chinese. Right? They tip over cars, they riot. I mean, that was the most emotion I've ever seen the people in that town display, was when they lost the Stanley Cup and they rioted. They don't riot over riot over China taking over the country.
Why do you think they go elbows up, gentlemen? Why do you think Carney's skating with the Edmonton Oilers?
The fucking guy misses an
talking
open
about
net.
Team Canada.
He misses an open net.
He did. But you're hitting the nail on the head, Marc, which is
bread and circuses.
Yes, and the one thing that if you say what is Canada, I would say for most Canadians, what immediately pops to mind is Team Canada playing at the Olympics or the Four Nations Cup or whatever. It's a very national. It is an international sport, but it should be, and I think every Canadian thinks it is. So Carney's going around bringing in Mike Myers, right? Yeah. And you go, Mike Myers hasn't lived here for forever.
Mike Myers has made his money in the United States. Mike he hasn't made shit in Canada. Same thing with that goofy.
I can't argue that.
Same thing with that goofy rat-faced fucker O'Leary. He hasn't made anything in Canada. I mean, he was the scamster with Softkey and the Learning Company. He's made whatever he's made in the United States. No Canadian, same thing with the Lululemon guy. No one's made any legitimate money in Canada other than the 20 to 30 families who run the country. That's the joke. That's the joke in plain sight. The people who control the company, right? Their families, McCain, all these guys, mentioned Power Corp, all these guys. It's all legacy Canadian money. See, now the RCMP's at the door.
Gentlemen, I appreciate you doing this. I hope it won't be the last time. I love throwing things out there. Two guys who are staring at Canada, and I don't know.
God bless you two. You two are on the front lines fighting it. I'm just I'm just trying to do my part from wherever the hell I am. But you guys are fighting are fighting the fight.
Appreciate you boys hopping on and giving me some time this morning.
Thanks for having me.
It's fun.